June 10th, meeting of the Riverfront Advisory Committee. Open comments up to the public, but no members of the public. Moving on to acceptance of the minutes. Joe, did you have a chance to send out the April ones?
I did not.
Okay.
I have not created any April ones. I will go back, look at the video.
Yeah, totally fine. I have been entirely out of the loop for like 2 months myself as well, so getting back on the horse. So we'll move that to the next meeting. And approve the minutes for April 8th then. So a bit of new business. Put an agenda item in here for kind of plugging the New Hampshire salt marsh plan. Others may know more about this than me. I don't know if this comes up in the coastal adaptation work group much.
Yeah, I got an invitation beforehand, so I signed up for it.
Okay.
And I'll try to go on that. But I think they have tools on there that allow you to see what the sort of status of their various shoreline areas is. Are you familiar with it, Lindsay, too?
I'm not sure. Is it the same one that does like the salt marsh migration predictions? Okay.
Yeah, that's that one.
That's what it's about. And it turns out Newmarket is a pretty important area for salt marsh migration in this whole area. So
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of what stuck out to me looking through that. I mean, obviously, like along the river, the further, inland you get, there's not actually salt marsh identified areas, but that like the entirety of the lamprey up into the middle of town is flagged as salt marsh migration, basically everything south of the town.
yeah, I think some of the really areas that are of high attention, there's not as much salt marsh migration areas on the lamprey because a lot of it's steep-sided.
Yeah.
So that nothing to migrate on. But I think, and a lot of the area that goes from the mouth of the lamprey north is already protected. But the mouth of the lamprey south is an area where it's relatively undeveloped, and salt marsh migration could be really critical in that area. So I think there are conversations about that already ongoing, so that's as much as I know about it. But
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. Kind of made me think a little bit too of like, from a riverfront advisory perspective, I think our focus has always been kind of like core downtown, but should it be more broad, or should we consider something like that? Because I know they did the same living shoreline investigation at Moody Point that they did for Shanda Park. Like, is anything coming of that? Who is looking at that? Like, who is staying in charge of that? And I don't have any answers for these questions. Like, they're honestly just rhetorical.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think it depends on whether Ellen sort of feels like they've got it under control. I feel like she's been active in that area. And
She has been in touch with them. I can reach out because I'd honestly love to learn more.
Yeah.
It kind of dropped off my radar.
But I think it's worth being aware of because there are no Newmarket parks on the Great Bay. That it's not as visible to us as all that Great Bay waterfrontage. But it is really quite a bit as a percentage of the bay, and it's if Great Bay is going to be the kind of really rich estuary that it's been in the past into the future, the marshes are really important.
Yeah.
And if you picture it could be 50 years away, without a place to go, it'll be dramatically changed. So lots happening in those areas.
Yeah, so just thought it was interesting. Obviously, that webinar is literally tomorrow. I hope I copied this in right so that is an actual Zoom link.
It is.
It is.
Okay, good.
I linked in and signed up for it, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Despite being younger, I'm not very good with technology, so I was like, I think this is working. It's telling me it's going to be fine.
Yeah, no, it worked.
All right, nice. Yeah, I will not be able to attend, but I'm glad to hear a couple folks can listen and just hear what they say about it. Because, yeah, really everything, everything along the Lamprey up to the dam gets flagged as migration area. So kind of even further supporting some of the conversations that we've been talking about, giving it an opportunity to migrate. Okay. Yeah, can follow up on that later. I'd love to just hear kind of what you guys think about it, what sort of things they choose to talk about.
Well, I think it's worth a conversation with Ellen. Is there any part of that that's sort of, that the public, at the charrette will touch on any of the Great Bay or any of what's happening with that? I don't know. It's something that, unless something comes before committees, a lot of times things don't get discussed very much. So until I got on car and some of these, the first time I sat in on a salt marsh conversation, I'm thinking, I hardly ever, and I live on the lower Lamprey, but I hardly ever thought about what might be happening or what should be happening. And then I went up and talked to somebody afterwards, and they said, no, things are being worked on, and that's fine. And sometimes these are things that are not public at this time, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I do think it's good for the public to think about that as part of Newmarket's heritage, is this fantastic estuary, and a lot of that waterfront borders on us, and what that means and where you can access it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, no, it's just kind of interesting looking through the salt marsh plan and also the living shoreline viewer. I mean, it really does continue to underscore that the downtown area of Newmarket, it's kind of ripe for that if we can work it. One of the scores in the salt marsh viewer thing is like adaptability or whatever. I think that's the challenge due to the steep slopes, limited frontage, things like that. But
Yeah. I think of it in terms of, it makes me glad we didn't hurry too much to try to come up with a finished product down there, because I think it's really important that we talk about it with the public in terms of what it would mean not to do out anything about a rising sea level in terms of how the park will be used in the future, whether everybody's okay with that. And if people were strongly against that, then we should understand, are we truly bound by, is there nothing we can do? In other words, could we make Shanda Park so that it's not going to flood so often? Is that an option? I don't know. I don't really know if it's possible. I mean, some people feel like flooding is part of things and it should be that way, but I think people should understand that, if we're already expecting by 2050-ish that things are going to go up by another foot.
Yeah.
Close. And you look at what happened in December or January and how much water there was there, and then it goes up, accelerates a little bit from there towards 2100. So it's good, when you fill out a permit to get a new dock or anything else, the number I hear is like 70 pages. It's a huge document. Big part of what they want people to do, and I don't know, I get it. I think it's almost the same form whether you're trying to build a hospital or a dock. So it's a little, but a big part of what they're trying to do is, if you're building a building that's supposed to last 100 years, think about this.
yeah,
And it's like the Hampton Beach Police Department. From what I understand, that building is going to look pretty wild because they're going to put it up several feet from what it is now. But they're assuming that, the roads out there will continue to exist in the future, but there's lots got to happen.
yeah.
So we're nowhere near like that up here in downtown Newmarket, but
Yeah, not as extreme here.
Well, not so much in the Riverfront downtown Newmarket, but Bay Road. The reason I know about the salt marsh migration projections and the salt marsh plan, the Bay Road project, the Nature Conservancy was heavily involved in that, and that whole Loverland Creek Preserve
Yes.
is a lot of salt marsh area, and the Bay Road culvert was designed to allow that salt marsh migration in the future and accommodate those projections, and targeting infrastructure that may be in need of an upgrade while considering the application, wetland application, and all of those factors. Salt marsh migration opportunities are another layer to that.
Yeah, yeah. And present grant opportunities in many cases too, in some ways. Is that a fair statement?
In many cases, yes.
Or at least it adds to a grant application.
Yeah, it certainly was a factor in the Bay Road project, and that was kind of the leading edge of that type of project and that work. And there's been a lot of monitoring that I know the Nature Conservancy has continued to do with that project to confirm the success story that it is.
Yeah. And going back to the educational part of it, when we had the Living Shoreline meetings, at the time those meetings were going on, were the part that perhaps people were most interested in for saltwater marsh migration, or at least vegetation migration, was actually going up Moonlight Brook. It's not a very long area, but they said, oh, this could be a lot healthier, you could have vegetation in here, this could look much different, much nicer. So, we spent a lot of time talking about water quality when we thought what we were going to be talking about is just design aspect, but there was a lot of water quality conversations.
Yeah, that was something that had come up, and I think the existing configuration of the culvert kind of limits the ability for that to be a thing. But just as that design moves forward, if there is any infrastructure consideration, I mean, it could potentially work the same way to allow it to migrate up into the channel. I don't know, for lack of a better word for that area, but parking area. I know.
Go a little bit.
Go a little further. Still bound by
It could look a lot nicer.
walls, but
It would look a lot nicer with water that could flow in and out and vegetation growing on the bottom. That could really
yeah.
be much nicer.
So yeah, I'd love to hear what they say. At some point, we can kind of circle back to that. Kind of moving on, I think Joe had sent this to kind of everyone, but wanted to talk about the floating river walk thing down in Marlborough, because that was definitely interesting to see. Did anyone read the article or look at the drone video they had? That was pretty neat. I guess not following along, they had a small lake. I think it used to be a prior reservoir in our town. Or are they a city? Can't remember. Doesn't matter.
I thought it's a concept that maybe we could look at or think about or get more information on.
Exactly.
And I see maybe two ways. One, somehow connecting the current bridge there, having some kind of walkway down to it, so it goes over the rocks and then over to Heron Point, or maybe on the other, going from Moonlight Brook or the town dock down to the pumping station, but that might interfere with the Living Shoreline, or it seemed like it might be a good something to take a look at. Maybe ideally, I like the idea of connecting to Heron Point at this point.
Yeah, it does seem like an interesting alternative, or at least worth discussion about high level feasibility if there's anything to look into there as a potential alternative to route people to the other bank without having to build a bridge. I mean, obviously, just what stands out to me looking at it is theirs is in a non-tidal area with no boat traffic, so there's clearly differences here, and I'm trying to not immediately rule it out because I think it's super interesting, but trying to think logistically through. Lindsay, do you know anything about the project we're talking about? I printed off their trail map or whatever, but
Oh, I didn't see the trail map. I watched the news segment that Joe sent the link for.
Yeah.
So the general sense of what the project was.
I'm guessing they didn't have a need for boat navigation through that.
No, I don't see anything that looks like they would. So,
Yeah.
because I think that's it, of like, I don't know if you, to me, this doesn't seem feasible if you're talking about like perpendicular crossing from Shanda Park to Heron Point, because it doesn't allow that navigable
Yeah.
channel. It's kind of a non-starter.
Mhm.
So it'd be like, yeah, parallel, like,
Mhm.
you know, something on the northeastern corner as you come down off the existing pedestrian bridge along the waterway there. Or, yeah, the same thing. Could you do it from Shanda Park down to like the boat launch, the Fish and Game boat launch or something?
Mhm.
You know, that would be pretty neat.
But I was kind of thinking if somehow we could do something from, like I say, the bridge over the rocks, you know, under the dam there and over to Heron Point, it becomes like an attraction on top of a walkway to Shanda Park.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and definitely interesting what other people think about it, just high level.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I think definitely, Sam, you touched on some things about the fact that we're tidal and we have to consider boat navigation. We also have a lot of private property
Right.
along that area that
Yep.
would have a lot of input from people. And again, I look at cost. I think we've discussed some ways to try to bring more people over to Heron Point with simpler things. Marking signage on sidewalks and getting some maps out and actually see what the draw is initially, to get over there first. So, a bridge like that is not going to be cheap. And again, the floating aspect, you're going to have to, if it's possible, you'd have to take into consideration the rise and fall and putting in pilings and things like that. The idea of bringing it down towards Shanda Park and over towards the pump house, again, do we look at something that's more cantilevered out? And then how does that affect, the waterways, and are there limitations to what you can do for covering water on a permanent basis? What's the risk of flooding, and then will that structure get some damage if it's the water levels come up? So,
I mean, so again, where it's a floating type of thing. I would
right.
hope that-
So,
My concern, besides the initial cost, is that maintenance, that ongoing maintenance cost. If there's flooding and then it gets damaged, then we have to look at damage and
And ice.
the ice damage, yeah.
Most things along the shoreline, well, in a lot of places, if they're floating, they have to come in. They're stored in the wintertime. A lot. I think the other way I look at it too is, I think we have a lot to do. We've talked about phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, whatever. I think for the charrette, these could be ideas of future things. But I feel like we don't have to make those decisions now, because nothing we do will either require that something like that be built or prevent it from being built in the future, but we've got a lot of things that need to be done and dealt with much sooner.
I agree. I would say if I had to prioritize things, Moonlight Brook and then the living shoreline is probably the top two things before. But this, again, looked like something neat.
yeah.
I think it's good to have a wide funnel for ideas right now. So that's an idea to consider. A lot, just like the pedestrian bridge is an idea to consider. I mean, I think one thing, again, another kind of low-hanging fruit, if you will, is that, Ellen and Bart and I walked the park system that we did with Mike Hoffman before, and I think Ellen was planning to move forward fairly quickly to try to mark those trails better. And she was even interested in trying to bring the high school students into that kind of a project as well. So that's something, it's all owned. You don't have a direct way to get on those trails right now because of the right-of-way issues, but you can walk public streets and get onto it and get to the Fish and Game landing. So on my to-do, and I think we've talked about this before, the question is, I don't know if it's feasible. I haven't, we've all been pretty busy the last little bit, but I want to go at low tide and look at the fishing game landing and just see how it compares at low tide with the Shanda landing. Because if they're both, you know, Shanda Park, you can use it to launch and take out a boat about 50% of the time. And really probably less than that. I try to do it, when I use my boat there, I try to do it within 2 hours of high tide. So you get about a 4-hour window twice a day. So neither that landing or the one down at the fishing game landing are going to be all tide. But I don't know if there's any difference in how much time you have to launch and take out a boat down there. But, you know,
I don't think you have a whole lot of time at the Fish and Game landing place there.
is it
It's
less,
almost all.
you think it's less than Shanda Park?
I think so.
I would agree.
Yeah. Well, if that's true, then that probably isn't going to be feasible, because I wouldn't be thrilled about that.
I think that's a good area for like a living shoreline, you know, from there.
You not have a landing there at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Well, you know, like I said, I haven't even looked at it at low tide. You can tell pretty quick if that's the way. But if you looked at it, Lindsay,
Yeah, I've walked down there. It's fairly flat, so once the tide starts going out, it's really shallow.
Really like a mud flat.
It's okay for like kayaks at high tide, and for a little bit on either side of high tide, but a larger boat.
and when you say a little bit either side of high tide, how much time?
I don't know, because I haven't gone, I haven't timed it. I happened to be down there around low tide, and it goes out pretty far. That's mud flat from the shoreline out, so.
No question. You can see from the Google Maps that it's a long
Yeah.
way out. But all it really counts is, and I'm not saying, I'm not disagreeing with you, I just haven't looked.
Yeah, it's
is
worth looking into.
If that 2.5 hour window, you know, if in other words, from mid-tide, there's enough water to go in and out there, and I'm not saying there is, but if it was, it kind of doesn't matter how flat it is or how shallow it is. I'll look at it.
You should.
I should look at it before I keep thinking about it.
It's still an interesting point, you know, what is its actual functionality as a boat launch? You know, I think that's a legitimate question.
Yeah, I use it all the time. It's a part of Shanda Park that, you know, any boat owner, it's much more convenient to look at the time of day and use that to take my boat in and out when I need to take it somewhere for work or something. And I think it does get a fair amount of use that way.
I would agree. I mean,
You're talking about the one at Shanda Park or the one at Fishing Game?
Shanda Park,
yeah.
absolutely.
Have you ever seen anyone try to put a boat in at fishing game, like just passively?
I have never seen anybody go down there besides myself just walking around.
Yeah, well,
That was
exactly.
why I didn't even know it existed until,
I did do.
That's true.
I mean, maybe its best and highest use is a picnic area or you know. I don't think it's a great place for a kayak launch. I think the best place for a kayak launch is probably right in town, because people can kayak into town, and that makes it much more of a destination.
Mhm.
But anyways, I'll take a look at that and just see. I'll probably confirm what you're telling me, but I'll look just the same.
Yeah, come back to that thought later, because I did want to touch on it later on too. About the whole concept of property ownership or whatever. But I did, just kind of in the new business thing, I'd like to continue that conversation with the school a little bit more. I want to give your like 60-second recap of what we were talking about now that we're kind of in public forum. But approaching, you know, the junior, senior high school for potential student engagement for Riverfront initiatives, see if can get folks interested in that, get anyone out for the charrette, or if there's an environmental club or something of of the type at the school. Get some level of engagement with them, just get a different age bracket, communicating with us, see if they'll get their families interested, just whatever. But I do think that's a great idea, so, you know, look forward to kind of following up after you have a chance to meet with the superintendent. So, on to kind of some old business or things that we've talked about previously. At the master plan subcommittee, I believe this month we'll be talking about another community survey to go out to folks. Someone in this phantom dropped copies here.
Sure.
Okay, I kind of figured because the Riverfront thing is highlighted
Yes.
or whatever, so I was kind of thinking he was giving us an invitation to talk about it.
Yes,
Um, But, yeah, so on one of the other pages, there's two questions kind of highlighted down at the downtown Riverfront part of it. I was kind of planning on giving this a little thought tonight, but figured we could have a short conversation as well. You know, obviously there's a few more kind of Riverfront questions on the prior survey. I know this one's trying to cover a lot of ground, so I'm not sure we're gonna get, you know, a ton of real estate here. But just kind of curious if anyone had, you know, questions or whatever. I kind of like how number 6 is presented of, you know, the opportunity for yes or no, but the invitation for someone to offer actual information about how they're engaging with it. So I don't think, kind of personally, I have much comment with number 6. I think it's generally well written. I think for number 7, it might be a subtle change, but I would think instead of, you know, what would you like to see in the downtown Riverfront area, to me, I would almost rephrase it as like, name one thing you would like to see. I think it makes it less nebulous as to what's being asked, and like, if you could have one thing there, what would it be? Like, I think that focuses people a little bit more for that snap answer rather than like, oh, well, I want general engagement and opportunity for whatever to, I want a better boat launch. Like, literally just like boil it down. What do you want?
Or even, what 3 things would you like to see? Because
Yeah.
it might be hard for people to prioritize
Yeah, but
their one item.
I like one, actually, because.
One.
Because when you get a survey this big,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna write an essay on each of these questions. So
Yeah.
if you were asking me for one thing, I'm more likely to think about it and give you a thought-out answer. If you ask me for an open number of things, I might just fluff it off.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of just think that because like sometimes, you know, I talk about my line of work of sometimes like people you'll be dealing with in business will kind of just try to like, you know, get you to make a reaction. Like you just try to force your hand into saying something or whatever. But I kind of think that has the same effect in a positive way of like boil it out of like nebulous opportunities for community engagement or, you know, more synergy with the waterfront to like, I want a living shoreline. I want a bridge to Heron Point. I want whatever that one thing is, but just tell me what your one thing is. I think we might get more useful feedback. So I would propose that potential change on Wednesday when I think we're going to discuss this. But if there's any other like thoughts, I mean, I don't know if we could squeeze a 3rd question on here. If we think just even these 2 is enough to inform some background as we go into the charrette in October, that may be adequate of just getting a little bit of information to inform a more focused discussion on this effort in a couple months' time. But curious what other people think.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about number 5? I know it's outside of our scope here.
Sure.
So, but do you know, when I was at the resilience meeting, they talked about new guidelines coming out for managing salt on the roads. how much salt's put out and stuff like that. So living somewhere where saltwater migration and salt is an issue, Moody Point had special rules for salt. Do you know if Rick now is, Rick's usually on top of everything, so I figured he probably was, but has that been a topic that there was a guy that was a member of that's what, he was with DES, and that had been his thing,
So was it a discussion about the new municipal Green Snow Pro program? Because previously the Green Snow Pro program had been targeted at contractors, private contractors, and they could get licensed and certified to reduce their salt use. So this is a targeted,
but now it's targeted to municipalities too?
well, previously the certification the legislation was such that it didn't actually apply to municipalities that were separate entities. But the new legislation has modified it so the municipal Green Snow Pro program, it's a mouthful, is now what DES is focusing on rolling out and finalizing the rules for so that they can start doing the certification targeted at municipalities and municipal highway crews.
Yeah, he didn't use those words, but I bet that's what he was talking.
Okay.
And we're on top of that, basically.
Yeah, in terms of following where that's at and when that's going to be going live for trainings and certifications, yes.
Great.
Okay, I will propose that change on Wednesday then. The Shandon Park signage, Moonlight Brook, well, let's start with the signage. You say it's there, which is an update to me. I just haven't been down there in a couple of weeks.
No, the Moonlight Brook signs are there, and they're, I think, we're still waiting. I'd only stopped there quick and bumped into somebody, got the conversation, but I don't think the QR codes are up yet.
Correct.
And Bart was going to give a final review on the QR, and I think it would be good to make that available as quickly as we can get on top of it, so that people can see. To me, when you see the sign, you say, "What's this about?" And the sign's not really going to give you any of that information, but the QR code will. And the other thing that we plan to do with this, the change don't feed the wildlife signage. I think Bart's still working on that, but he was going to set up a meeting for the chief of police, and Bart and I were going to go meet with him, because I think the simple answer is, that everybody has to understand, this isn't about stopping a kid that throws a piece of sandwich at a duck. What you are concerned about is people that love to feed birds in commercial quantities of
Serial
red
offenders.
and serial offenders, right? And as long as you have an enforcement mechanism, I think that's what you need to make it real. So that's what we were going to talk about.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, appreciate the update. I know, you, Ellen, and Bart in particular have spent a lot of time, on that conversation, so.
I think we're almost there. A lot of the language, the QR language and that are there. QR code is going to take you to heading and then language underneath it. It's not two different QR codes. And that may apply as well. We're making progress with the lamprey kennel. It's good. We did get a warning buoy put in the, you come out of the Rivermore docks, or the docks that are in that direction. There's a fellow up in town that I've been working with on the lamprey trial, and he said, if you sit out there, maybe you can speak to this, but a lot of people that came out of those, at mid-tide, there would be a small boulder field, maybe 50 feet diameter, and it's right there, so you can whack the prop on it. It's not that wide, and there's no clue if you're backing the boat out there. There was nothing that says, gee, remember, there's rocks here, it's mid-tide. And he he said, you know, it's kind of a shame not to have a marker there. So last year I asked the Port Authority guy and harbor master, could you put a buoy there? At first he said no, and then I talked to Bart about it, we set up a meeting with Rick, talked to Rick about it, Rick called Pepperell Marine, they were gonna put the buoy in there, and then I had another meeting with the Port Authority this spring, and we talked about it, and when I told him that, well, we solved it, Pepperell Marine is gonna put the warning buoy there, he says, outlet, and it's there. Oh, that's
All right.
something.
Well, got it there in hand. Oh, nice. So yeah, I agree. It sounds like people are at work with the QR codes, but I think that kind of completes the picture and the signage saga of not only what is the sign, but why is this sign? That's probably the missing link right now.
Well, and I think it could be a good way to communicate and educate people in the future. If that makes sense to do in certain places, it's a way to get a little more information from people that you might not see.
It does look like Lamprey River Advisory Committee is continuing to engage Dr. Jones for the bacterial monitoring. So that will be occurring again this year. That's really the only share. I don't think that's exactly cutting edge information, but just continued ongoing monitoring as I think last year, you know, to potentially provide an unfair scientific summary. It was just, it rained a lot, the bacteria was high everywhere, and that was really all anyone got out of it. So,
When they do the monitoring, do they know, like, what the weather's been and whether it's low tide or high tide, and whether there's a duck population or bird, waterfowl population? I mean, how, do they just throw out what the bacterial counts are, or is the information more detailed?
more detailed.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've seen any or been given a summary, but we did get one at the Conservation Committee probably a year and a half ago now.
Mm-hmm.
I think towards the end of when he wrapped kind of his first year looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do know it's not just like raw bacterial count. They do, again, I'm going to get this wrong. Some science person can call me out on it, but like basically a DNA trace to see your, bird, human,
Right.
livestock, whatever. So there is subdivision within all the sample points about not just raw count, but what they're attributing it to. I do think he notes the weather. I do remember that being part of the conversation. Is that
Precipitation events are
Yeah.
discussed in there.
The
I think,
precipitation levels are noted, but I think minimal. I think that's all there is.
it might
If
be
there's been
at
any
time of
previous
sample? Yeah.
The tide is a question that I've asked, and that is not indicated when they take the sample.
Okay.
is there only one tidal site
It would just be Moonlight Brook. I think all the other sites are
upstream?
upstream because they're all the way like in the Epping,
I think
Raymond,
there
and all
might
that.
be a second tidal site that's not sampled regularly, but had been part of the previous sample rounds.
Maybe.
It was just a slightly different location that was definitely lamprey and not moonlight,
Yeah.
but in the same general downtown vicinity.
What I would be interested in, because it's so relevant to what we're doing, is if you sampled at the boat landing and at the lagoon, and not just the lagoon, to see what is the difference there. Because, lots of people, you have to get your feet wet when you're getting out of your kayak, or most people do. And
Yeah, one's kind of in the active channel and one's sort of recessed a little bit.
And one's a kind of a stagnant area. I mean, the amount of flushing that goes on in that lagoon area, the culverts are filled with sand now, it's not going to clear out of there very well. The one by the boat landing might have lots of fecal bacteria because of the ducks, but not much human.
Yeah.
If it's diluted in the main river. But that's all speculation. It would be interesting to know if that were true.
Is there any more information on where the sources of bacteria may be coming from upstream? The fecal bacteria?
As far as the same, I think they did the same DNA source tracing analysis at the sites upstream that they did at the outlet and on other sites at the lamprey. I don't recall seeing the results. I know there were indications of high counts and varied sources, but I don't have that data or that report.
Is there a time frame for when they might have that?
It may
finalized?
be out, I don't know, I haven't seen it.
For last year, I don't
know if last
kind of
year's-
forgetting.
The last I heard, I mean, they were still doing upstream testing. And
I'll look into it, see if it's available.
Do we know more about when, as I understood it, you were in the process of lining up grants and everything to do the testing to find out definitively what are the sources, or try to narrow down what are the actual sources?
Yes, a project for actual investigation into the stormwater systems that discharge to Moonlight Brook. We are completing the application for the loan with principal forgiveness right now. We are approved from DES or invited to submit the application, and we got the warrant article on the vote that gives us authority to borrow. So we're following the steps. Next step is applications due the end of this month. So I've been working on that application and the scope of work for that project. We will likely get through the review approval process by the end of the summer and be ready to go ahead with that investigation.
And you could do that this fall if you had it?
Yeah, yep.
Great. I'll mention that when I was at that resilience meeting, so we were all supposed to come, it was sort of an interactive forum. This was like a few weeks ago. We were supposed to present projects in our town and stuff like that. So I actually, I think people hear a lot about Moonlight Brook from me, but I presented it at that forum, and a lot of the DES people, the COP people, the PrEP people are all there. So they hear about it, not just from you, but they hear about it from some of the other people too. So hopefully that helps you.
That's good.
Yeah, and Lindsay's being a little bit immodest, like, for the general public. The town engages in a very lengthy process to get something like this done. I mean, you have to form a pre-application, it gets reviewed, then they give you, okay, we invite you to submit the application, meaning, i.e., if you give us this project, we'll fund it, but then you have to bring it to town warrant, and then you have to do a full application. So it is a long, cumbersome process. It's not just like, oh, I'll fill it out when I get to it. It takes like a year plus, so it's a lot of work on town staff, so obviously thank you for
And then
following
people
through.
come up to you and say, why isn't this done yet?
Yeah, well, we've been talking about that a long time. I thought it'd be done by now. It's like we haven't even gotten the money. So, yeah, it's a process. So the last item that I had for discussion, and then kind of open up to other people, but going back to the property ownership part of it. First question would be, has anything really changed since that initial map kind of came together? And then my second question is, can we work to delve into a few of those open-ended items like further? And like, I'll help because I know you got plenty of stuff to do. But I think one thing that I think is becoming important and that might really help for the charrette is having the best understanding we possibly can about ownership along the riverfront, just because I think it informs all of these things that we're trying to talk about. So I think it's kind of an important piece to the puzzle to try to iron out. And maybe there's not much left to find, but like we can even talk offline about what that looks like. But just like what else could we try to pull? Because I feel like there was one spot we weren't sure about, or we weren't sure about easement language, and a couple others. Like,
Yep. There hasn't been significant progress on that, at least from my end. I haven't had recent conversations with Bart about anything that he may have found, but
okay,
we could have a meeting and determine what we're still missing or what we need more clarification on, and then kind of take some steps to move that forward.
yeah, I think that would be time well spent of like what else, because the answer may be there's not much else to find. Like it's kind of unhelpfully vague, but I think even just knowing the answer to that is probably helpful.
Yeah, and correct me if this is incorrect impression. I think when you get down to it, to really open it up for full public use, in most of these areas that we don't know, the town either has ownership or a permit that, of some kind of, what's the term?
Easement.
Easement that allows that kind of use. Then what you'd have to do is, and maybe this is what the purpose of the charrette is to find out from people, what is it you would really value? So then if the opportunity came up, or if you wanted to engage the landowner and said, boy, people would really like this to have happen, we're willing to negotiate with you, it might cost some money, it might be something we need to swap or something like that, but I don't know that it's a question of just investigating more at this point. It's more a matter of what do we want to do, and is it something people would spend money on? Am I close to right on that, or?
Yeah, I think I think there's still some question mark as to what kind of access easement language there currently is for some of those areas.
Okay. So there is some more.
Yeah.
More to be done.
Yeah, and ultimately, that's probably where it lands. Okay, it exists here, there's an access issue here,
Right.
is there something? But yeah, just understanding the limitations of that. I think you guys made an awesome first jump, but I don't think it's quite there,
Yeah.
or it has not been exhausted.
There's still a
yet.
lot of questions
Yeah.
to be answered.
Yeah, I think I know, the type of access point that exists up in the Bryant Rock, Bay Road area. I was, one of the meetings I was at, somebody said, oh, there's an access point up there. And I know Mike Hoffman had mentioned there was an easement up in that area. And I went up, and the only thing I could say is, there's a lot of, you can walk out, there's a little area that they put signs up saying this is not public, but it doesn't say no trespassing. So what you come out of that with is, they're not telling you you can't go there, but they don't want you to go there.
It's not advertised.
And pitch a lawn chair there and say, I'll spend the day, or anything like that. So it's,
Are you talking about down to that dock, that area?
yeah. Yeah.
Good. I don't recall seeing any signs that saying this is private property.
There is
Maybe it's there.
There is some kind of sign there that you could interpret to say this isn't a public place.
I always walk down there or have
I walked
walked
down there, nobody said boo. I'm just saying it, but it also didn't look like a useful kayak launch to me anyway.
Yeah, you'd have to carry your kayak on you. It's hard getting down there.
So it's been described in ways as something like that would be useful like that, and I don't know how it could be used or what value it has. And
You can bring your kayak up there, paddle up to there and tie it up and go into downtown and then come back and leave.
But I think they have fencing all around there. So is that, so when you walk down to Bryant Rock, down to the back, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Then they have that little outcrop. There's signage all in through Bryant Rock that basically says, please respect our property as you're coming through.
Right.
But I think that kayak launch area is specific to the owners that live there. That is where they launch their kayaks.
I'm not
So-
sure of that. That's different than what Mike Hoffman thought was the case. And there's no signage that would tell you otherwise.
Again, that's why it's important to get the easements to find out exactly what people are allowed to do.
That's an
That's the
example.
key thing, and not
Yeah.
go by what someone has said in the past.
Yeah, and as I said, I was at a meeting where somebody brought up, oh, I know what it was I was talking to. I think I was talking to Patrick, and they talked about it at Black River Advisory Committee, and so there was a discussion about that being up there, and I'm saying, well, it's kind of confusing to see it and think there is something more that it could be than in what it is already under the easement, and, that's the kind of thing we should have more information.
Yeah.
Is there an easement, isn't there like a boathouse or something where water passes underneath? There's a structure that, there's water, I don't know whether, I can't call it a culvert. Yeah, so it's off more onto Bay Road, and it used to be yellow. It's a residence above it now, and I think there was a house off to the right-hand side.
There's a boathouse over there, right?
Yeah, but could the easement, I'm just pondering if it's the underneath of that. I mean, again, we'd have to really take a look at what the property lines are in that area, and
No, I'm
the
betting
plots.
it's the Bryant Rock, what you said, Joe. I think that's probably it, but I think it may be that there's no use to be had beyond what is currently true, is that if you know that it is okay to go out there because there is an easement to allow the public to walk out there. And nothing on their sign says you can't do that. It just says, and to your point, it says, keep going.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
again, you have to look at all the easements
Yeah.
and what it actually says. I mean, if it's for town use, it could just be for them to access down to the river.
Right.
And that's the difference between public use, which is also very confusing because public use means that people can pass through. But if it's
Where it
town-
passes through, there's a dock to walk out.
Right,
you know.
right.
So,
And it's got a locked gate on it. That gate is locked.
okay.
It's a 42 inch at least high lock that goes down to where they have their kayaks that are launched. So it's not something that the public can go down and do.
But
So,
So it'd be good to have.
I have, and I don't recall a walk there. I mean, I haven't been down there for another.
I thought it was locked.
I thought I went through it, but
Yeah.
I don't ever trust my memory
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a
Right with
lock
ya.
there.
And that's, I mean, it's a microcosm, but that's why, like,
Yeah.
I think this is worth doing, because everything kind of hinges on, okay, what actually is a rate currently?
Yeah.
Or what isn't, and even identifying what is and what isn't, I think is kind of essential for this. So I'll send something to you and Barry and see if we can find a time to get into it one way or the other. I can come to town hall at some point, make you guys not stay into the night. We can do it in normal business hours.
The intent is to get an understanding before October.
Yeah, I think to see if we can pull the thread further. Try to eliminate as many questions as we can before October. So there's an understanding of potential limitations, or if we're going to put up maps or anything for as concepts,
Yeah.
that it tries to take things like that into account.
I think it would be good if we could see, and again, it might have been the conversation, I think it was that Herring Day, I went to Herring Day, and Patrick was there. And he raised a question, which I don't know we've talked about it before, that it would be good for us to, give some thought about what the questions that are happening at the charrette.
Mhm.
And I know Bart's working long and hard, and I think he works on that with Stratford, but maybe, before we get to the point where it's presented at the charrette, it would be good to see drafts of that, just like you saw a draft of the survey.
Yeah.
It would be good to do it pretty soon.
I
We're gonna be there before we know it.
I put a note in here to just kind of ask for any updates or whatever. Obviously, I think the date is fairly set at this point. Whether that's, I don't think that's here or there. But what is the content, and do we have an opportunity to meet with these folks beforehand? I feel like we kind of asked that, and it might have been no. But do we know what we're planning on presenting and in what format?
I think it would be a good time to kind of.
Yeah.
Well, and if they can provide some questions and an outline as to what they've done in the past,
Yeah.
so that we can have a chance to look at it and gauge where it's going to go.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it would be good, it might have been before you came in, but when I stopped by to see if the signs were there, I bumped into a neighbor, and she was walking with another Newmarket resident, and I mentioned that the charrette was coming, and they were like, oh, I would love to go to that, yeah. So I think it would be great if there was an email that was okay to distribute for people that are interested. If somebody says they're interested, I don't think it's too early to.
So sort of a save the date kind of thing?
Yeah, we could try to save the date right away, and you could have something that when we talk to somebody about it, we can say, yeah, I'll send you an email describing that. Because I think I think people could be, you know, if we're trying to build a good attendance to that, I think that will help people kind of get aware early.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, it's only like 4 months from now, which in this day and
Two
age,
of them are
unfortunately, is
July
like,
and August, right?
yeah.
Yeah, right.
Like, might as well be 20 minutes from now, like it's today, and spoilers, but like, and people are already planning kind of what they're doing in the fall, or they're gonna blink because it's summer and they're with kids or they're traveling or whatever, and yeah, it's already September, so I think the time to get that out is probably in the next few weeks, just so there's an awareness of it, and people who want to be there will put it on their calendar now, and then people who aren't particularly interested will have just more time to interact with it and then maybe become interested.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about the July meeting, but if we don't have a July meeting, then maybe we could talk to Bart about maybe using that August meeting as a target to have some kind of early draft of what we think people should be talking about and how it should be presented to them or something like that.
That's kind of where my mind's at, so I mean, I love what other people's input are, but I'm kind of trying to be, respectful of it's summer, people got a lot going on, like maybe not meet in July, especially knowing it's right after the major holiday week. And then, re-engage in August with that intent. Which would make that date, what?
August 12th.
12th. Shockingly, that might actually be a problem for me. Just throwing out ideas. Would the 5th or the 19th work for people? Kind of go off a quorum.
I can't do the 5th, but I'm fine with the 19th.
I could do the 5th.
So I'm taking it the 12th doesn't work
I
with
could
you,
do the
Sam?
19th.
I have an event on the 12th
Okay.
that it's an all-day thing, so
Okay.
I'd be screaming in here after
Yeah.
like 9 hours of something. I'm like, that sounds kind
Yeah,
of terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Either the 5th or the 12th, or the 19th works for me.
okay.
19th's okay with you, Joe?
I'm sorry, what date?
August 19th.
Yeah, 19th, just the 12th, that interval doesn't work for me.
Yep, 19th is okay.
Betsy?
Yeah,
How about we change it to the 19th?
All right. Well, aim for that. I think that'll give some time, hopefully give us a little flexibility too, as we try to look at that. Give us 2 months to delve into that. I'll send Bart an email. Him and I can talk more Wednesday too, or whatever, just about things. But at least let him know I want to chat with him for a minute later this week. That's all I had. Is there anything else anyone wants to discuss right now? I don't.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. I'll do it. Thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you.